Coming up on today's Next Fan Up podcast.
Why don't you just make the Chiefs your boyfriend? See if we can get the wheels to fall off that train.
There are some flaws there, and you're thinking, first of all, there speaks the man who drafted the greatest quarterback of all time in the 6th round and thinks it happens every week.
Can't go broke taking a profit, right?
But my top defensive guy is a defensive lineman from Miami, Jalen Phillips.
Talking with the other SuperFans, I don't think this is an extremely deep draft as far as like executive vice presidents of football or GMs go.
Even tucked away up here in the southern tip of Alaska, which is what everybody thinks Seattle is.
It's the SuperFan Super Mock Draft. Here we go.
Can you guys hear me? Sorry, hold on.
32 SuperFans.
I couldn't understand a word they were saying.
One Pod Vader.
You fired up for that, man? Huh?
Every angle of the NFL covered.
We on go time. We still on go.
This is Next Fan Up.
We're live, bro.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of the SuperFan Super Mock Draft. If you've missed part 1, well, go back and check out part 1. Picks 1 through 11 are done and in the books, and we are so excited. We have very special guests, excited to not only lift up the voice of the fan here as we pick all the players we want to see our teams draft, not predicting who we think our teams are going to draft. These are the players that we want our teams to draft. That is the experiment that we're doing here. But along with the SuperFans, we brought in a couple of other voices to help us out, including Randy Mueller, former NFL general manager. He'll be jumping on board here to give us some of his thoughts on the draft and the draft process from the perspective of a former NFL general manager. So he's done it a couple of times before, for real. And we'll also bring in draft expert from deepfrieddraft.com, Brian Bosarge, to help us out as we move along. And move along we shall. Let's get things kicked off here. At pick number 12, the Philadelphia Eagles are running to the podium, at least if James has anything to say about it, to take the best receiver available, Jalen Waddle from Alabama. I mean, the Eagles need a wide receiver.
Their wide receiver room is atrocious, and if Jalen Waddle's still on the board here at 12, it's a slam, like you said. Their guy may hurt himself trying to run this card up to the podium there in Cleveland to make this pick. Waddle has some of the best start and stop ability you'll ever see from a wide receiver. He goes 0 to 60 as fast as a Ferrari. He would be a great selection here for Philly.
All right, James. So we mentioned it as we announced the pick. How are your hamstrings? Did you pull one? I mean, how fast was this selection?
It was pretty obvious. Look, the trade affecting our mock draft in kind and just watching the board, seeing who's picking where, what we're doing for teams without super fans. I was just hoping that one of the big 3 wide receivers would fall, and one did. And for me, picking for this squad, this seems like the obvious choice. Unfortunately, last year, this time, I made a pretty fair and obvious choice for the squad, and they went a different direction. So we'll see how it plays out in real life.
Is Jalen Waddle the one of the big 3 that you want, or you're okay with any of the 3?
I'm okay with any of the 3. Waddle just happened to fall because the other 2 were gone at the time. With us trading back, I would love to say that's what the Eagles are thinking, but they're trying to obtain draft capital to take care of multiple positions within this draft as quickly as possible as far as development. So this first pick, I would love for it to be one of the big 3 wide receivers. Waddle, if he's the 3rd one off the board at this point, great. I know they still have high hopes on Jalen Reagor, probably not the best decision to take another receiver in back-to-back drafts. But there's really no veteran presence out there and no real difference maker as a solid number 1 in our current core. It doesn't look like they're going to bring in anybody to fill that void. All the other options are pretty much over 30 at this point as far as the best available. And we've already gone through that with 2 guys who really couldn't stay healthy over the last 2 years in Jackson and Jeffrey.
I mean, your team does have a lot of holes, and you're still picking at a point where you could go in any of a number of directions. So where else are you looking?
Defensive back, Patrick Surtain Jr., being touted as the best corner available. Definitely be great to have him learn opposite side of Darius Slay. Would be a big help to this team. Recently acquired a linebacker via free agency, but I feel like there's help that can be had there in the draft as well. If Micah Parsons is still available at that point, but that may be a little too high. Those are the three main positions I'm looking at, really: wide receiver, corner, and linebacker.
You mentioned your team is looking to acquire draft capital because of the salary cap situation that you're in. So in this scenario where we see Trey Lance falling, would you be amenable to trading back?
Depending on how far he falls and if another team is ready to jump up to that 11 spot to take him, I wouldn't be completely opposed to that. Again, my first choice is one of the wide receivers, Chase, Smith, or Waddle. After that, I say we switch over to defense and try to take care of that side of the ball. So if it's one of the corners like Pat Surtain Jr., trying to think of the other guys, J.C. Horn, Caleb Fairley, Newsome Jr., or Asante Samuel Jr., if one of those five is still available, depending on how far we can fall back and still acquire one of them, I'd be okay with that as well. But it all depends on how far back they're trying to go. I don't want it to be a thing where, okay, because of our crappy season, we started out with, the 6th pick. We traded back to 11. Then we're trading back to the late teens and then the mid-20s and then out of the first round altogether. I'm not sure there's that much draft capital to obtain to fill all the holes. We do need an impact in the first round of somebody who could come in and contribute. They don't necessarily need to be a star out the gate, but they have to be able to continue, and we need somebody in the first round who's going to be able to do that.
Well done. So you get your guy. Hopefully he can catch better footballs than babies.
Well, I don't have to worry about that. That's your problem now.
Number 13, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, and Ken will make the choice. It is the cornerback, J.C. Horn.
You insult me here by having the college listed of J.C. Horn as Virginia Tech and not the great University of South Carolina. I'm a little upset about that, but I mentioned earlier about the Chargers potentially trading up to draft Patrick Surtain, and to me, there's not a whole lot of difference grade-wise between Surtain and J.C. Horn. J.C. Horn is easily the best press man corner in this draft. He takes chances. He gets beat occasionally, but he is just absolutely great. He's tested through the roof athletically. If anybody has a chance to go back and watch the game this year against Auburn and watch how he just completely took away Seth Williams from Auburn, who was one of the best receivers in the SEC. He'll probably be a 3rd or 4th round pick in this year's draft. But J.C. Horn, great pick here by the Chargers.
At number 14, the Minnesota Vikings will select offensive lineman Elijah Vera Tucker from USC. To me, I think this is another candidate to move down. Most mock drafts that I've seen have the Vikings taking a tackle, neither of them still available, the two top guys at least, or a pass rusher. And my notes say that most of these pass rushers have big question marks. This guy is number 10 on Mel Kiper's big board, played left tackle last season, considered a guard, but I say that just makes him versatile. And I like versatile guys. Highest ranked guy left for the Vikings to draft, in my opinion.
This would be a Vikings pick here. I think they'll love Elijah Vera Tucker, like you said, his versatility that he brings to the offensive line. Can probably play every position except center. Could probably even play that if he tried. Edge rusher seems to be has been a common mocked pick to them. But with Kwity Paye off the board, I mean, he's probably the cleanest of the edge rushers in this class. everybody else, like you said, had question marks built in. If their medical team clears someone like Jalen Phillips from Miami, I think he could very well be the pick here at 14, or like you said, a trade down, because Rick Spielman is not happy if he's not drafting at least 11 or 12 guys per year. So, I don't know how many picks he has. He may need to, acquire some more later round picks to hit his quota.
Pick 15. And something I'm not quite sure I can say anymore. I can't guarantee that the Patriots don't make a selection in this particular spot. The New England Patriots will select. There's a quarterback on the board. And I say the Patriots pass and take linebacker Micah Parsons from Penn State. Now, I know a lot of people have Micah Parsons penned in at this particular spot anyway. My point here, and I've said it already, is I don't like – basically, after Trevor Lawrence, I don't like the capital that it's going to require me to draft one of the 4 quarterbacks that have question marks in regards to will they be a success in the NFL or not. And so that's why I'm going to pass. And especially since it's Trey Lance, who didn't play at all last year, I have no real concept as to whether or not Trey Lance can be a success in the NFL. To me, the Patriots are going to go with a spot that they've needed to get younger at for quite some time, and that's linebacker. Heck, last year I believe they started the season with officially only 1 linebacker on their roster. If they don't trade back, which we know is something that Bill Belichick likes to do, I think linebacker is the pick here, and I think that the option would be Micah Parsons because he's a prototypical Patriots linebacker, with the difference being he's fast. That's the way that I look at it.
Right. In my last mock draft, I had the Patriots stand in pat and taking Mac Jones. It's at a potential landing spot there. I wouldn't be thrilled with it per se, but it is what it is. I think with Micah Parsons, it depends on how a team values an off-ball linebacker. I feel like Bill Belichick probably values them more than most coaches would in today's NFL. But Parsons is athletic. You would think he would have been more productive at Penn State than what he was, but didn't exactly get his great share of solo tackles during his career at Penn State. But I don't want to say he's like Jamie Collins was probably in his prime, but that's probably a good comparison, I think, for Parsons. And New England fans like yourself would be familiar with Jamie Collins throughout the years. So I feel like this would be a good pick. It would feel like a Belichick pick, but I'm like you. I think a trade down could be in the realm of possibility as well.
I mean, one of the things, if they don't trade up to get one of those quarterbacks, and we know quarterback is their biggest position of need. I am on record as to saying Cam Newton is no longer a quarterback. I don't know what he is, but he can't throw the ball to save his life. So they need to do something at the quarterback position. And while one would fall in their lap in this particular scenario, I still wouldn't go with the quarterback in this particular scenario. I think there are guys in the second or even later rounds that the Patriots could get that will provide the exact same amount of upside as Trey Lance, who's the available quarterback in this particular position. And like I said, the Patriots love to trade back. And I'm hearing thoughts that with the way that the salary cap will be moving up in the future years and not taking a ginormous step up, that they're looking to acquire draft capital for 2022.
I think you could see that happen with a lot of teams, especially you start getting to the mid to late portion of round one as teams that you don't want to say punt on the 2021 draft. But, yeah, because that's the other thing is you don't really have a whole lot of face time with these players. There was no combine this year. So all of your testing is based on pro days, and you don't know if you're going to get the full medical picture on some of these guys. So, yeah, I could see, the more veteran organizations like New England say, hey, let's just get what we can get here and just move on into next year.
At pick number 16, the Arizona Cardinals are up, and they will select cornerback from Virginia Tech, Caleb Farley. Dr. Jones made this pick. Now, what are your thoughts here with the cornerback selection?
Well, the good doctor here should probably know that, there's appears to be some sort of issue with, I want to say it's a neck or back issue with Caleb Farley. That's why they're, see some he's been starting in some mock drafts just completely falling out of the first round. I think he's going to end up probably in the later portion of round 1. But if there was no health issue here, Farley's name is right up there with Surtain and J.C. Horn as far as the top corners. Before the pro day circuit started, before the injury news came out, Farley was consistently mocked as the first cornerback taken and oftentimes the first defensive player taken in the draft. His ball skills are great. He's, has a good size, athleticism, and if he's the pick at Arizona here at 16, I don't fault it. They obviously would have cleared his medicals here, but that is the only issue with Caleb Farley as far as I'm concerned.
Pick 17, the Las Vegas Raiders will make a selection, and it'll be the safety from TCU that I'm going to butcher his name, Trevon Moehrig. Am I close?
That sounds right to me.
Sorry, Trevon and your family for not doing my research and getting your name pronunciation. Monty mentions this was the closest I have ever been to pulling off the elusive trade back for more picks in a mock draft. Dr. Jones apparently took a little too long on his selection ahead of him and got him a little upset. Monty has definitely been, I'll say, overly optimistic about the Raiders and their potential success. It looks like the Raiders took that step back that I thought they were going to take a couple years ago, and I still believe the Raiders' arrow is pointing down, not up.
Well, the first thing here for Monty is he failed to select a player from Alabama, Clemson, or one of the other teams that played in the college football playoff. So that may be the pick may be off there. Trevon Moehrig is the top safety in this class. That I don't really think that's up for debate at this point. Some will say Javon Holland from Oregon. Is he a first-round pick? I don't know. If he is, I think he's going to go in the back end of the first round. I can't see him going here as high as 17. This could be like he said, we're pulling a trade back where if the Raiders can move back into, like, say, the mid to late 20s, and Moehrig was still there, then yes, I could see that pick. I think safety is a position of need for them. I think you could look here at someone like Christian Barmore from Alabama as a potential player here after the release of Maurice Hurst the other day. They have a hole there on their roster. So the Raiders, they have a type. And so, but a trade back here would probably be the best for the Raiders here. It would be a reach to take Moehrig at 17.
Excellent. I have even more ammo now to make fun of Monty. Here I go. Monty, you drafted a guy who was not involved in the college football playoff. What were you thinking?
I was so close, Pod. I was so close to the elusive next fan up mock draft trade back. One pick away. If Dr. Jones hadn't picked the guy that Buffalo Rob wanted, I'd have been able to trade back and pick up a third.
Well, you ended up taking safety Trevon Moehrig from TCU. I'm assuming this is a position of need.
I think this is the biggest hole on the roster. I know
not Raiders, offensive line.
I think offensive line is there too, but some of the people that they jettisoned didn't play that much last year, so they were doing a lot of shuffling on the offensive line. So their current roster as it stands, some of those guys played last year, and Neil Kiper Jr. told me this is a good draft for offensive tackles. So I was hoping that one of the top guys would fall into the second round and I could address O-line in round 2. And there's really only a couple of safeties that I have seen that look like they could be potential first or second rounders. So I just grabbed one.
Well, I can tell you that Randy Mueller, who we've been talking to all through this draft, really likes a guy that is not selected by any of our super fans here in the first round or even in the second round, and that is the kid from Alabama, Alex Leatherwood. He really likes him.
I've got 2 picks in the third round when we're coming up on that in the mock. I'm going to swoop him up. That's the inside info that I needed.
There you go, Monty. You're going to get first round value in the third round.
Take that, Saints Chris and Neil Kiper Jr.
And now I have to slap my own hand for giving away a spoiler in the later rounds of the SuperFan Super Mock Draft. It's terrible.
Dope. We could edit that one out.
I could, but I won't. Where else are you looking to sort of fill the holes on the Raiders?
So the Raiders probably could upgrade all over on the defense, but I am very curious to see who Gus Bradley likes. I mean, they've invested some draft capital in the defensive backs. They signed Corey Littleton, and I actually really like Nick Kwiatkowski. So I think their linebackers have potential, but we just haven't seen them play very well. And maybe that's their old Paul Gunther defensive coordinator. Maybe those guys really are junk, buyer beware in the free agent market. But I think the Raiders, there's still talk they might bring in Melvin Ingram or Big Rush Richard Sherman. So that might help out on the defense. But, I mean, they could probably pick up some depth for wide receiver. I mean, the Raiders aren't that good of a team, so there's definitely a lot of options of who they could bring in.
Trey Lance still on the board. You're not interested in a quarterback of the future? I mean, every year is Derek Carr's last year.
I know. That's what everyone says. I guess, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked, but I don't see Trey Lance falling that far, so I hadn't really thought about quarterback. And I mean, I thought Marcus Mariota played all right in spot duty, so they'll have a decision if they want to go with the guys they got next year. One of those guys are going to have to get extended, or if the wheels fall off the train, they can pick the quarterback of the future in the draft next year. I heard Gruden loves the upcoming class.
What class doesn't he love?
Exactly
all right. Well, Monty, congratulations on your selection here. I do think that offensive line is going to be something you're going to need to address eventually, even if those guys played last year.
Yeah,
you probably 100%. Want some upgrades.
I think that they've got 2 picks in the third round and a second round pick, so I'd be shocked if they don't have at least 1, probably 2 offensive linemen for depth. But free safety is just such a huge need for them. And, with Gus Bradley coming in, they're going to need somebody back there who they can teach how to run that system, cover 3 or whatever they're calling it. But I don't know. I heard Trayvon can cover the field. He can come down and help out with some of the tight ends the Raiders have to contend with in that division, and then go play center field. Whatever they do, they need someone who can, get some turnovers and make some plays. Let's see the silver and black in the playoffs this year. That's what the people want.
I don't know what people you're talking to, but sure, I'll run with it.
You and your son would be so excited to root for the Raiders to knock off the Chiefs in the playoffs next year.
Well, I'm rooting for anyone to knock off the Chiefs.
See what I'm saying? Get on board. When the next fan up has their mock draft next year, we could all be in Vegas sitting by a pool doing that.
Should I make the Raiders my boyfriends? I could do that.
That's a bold move. Last time we did that, things did not go well. So please, why don't you just make the Chiefs your boyfriend? See if we can get the wheels to fall off that train.
That's not a bad idea. It could reverse the curse.
Get in there.
No, I don't want to reverse the curse. I want the curse to continue. All right, Monty. Well, good job. And I'm sure we'll talk some more down the road.
All right, Jay. Thanks. Cheers.
Pick number 18 is the Miami Dolphins, and Ron is going to make his second pick here for the Dolphins. And I don't know. I think this might be a little early, but he's going to take the running back from Alabama, Najee Harris.
Is it early? Yeah, because I'm on team. Don't pick a running back in the first round ever. So that on the face is too early. But Najee Harris here, he's consistently been mocked here to the Dolphins' second selection in the first round. I could see a receiver like a Rashad Bateman here potentially going to Miami. Like I said, they need to give weapons for Tua here. If Miami's going to trade back, because like I said, the rumors today are they're talking about trading out of 6. I think they're more inclined they'll trade out of 18 before they would trade out of 6. And then if they do that and they can get Najee Harris later in the first round, it would provide a little more comfort knowing that you at least got some extra picks out of it. But that's if Najee Harris is a selection here, I'm not going to fight it. I mean, depending on who you ask, most people have Najee Harris as the top running back. I have Travis Etienne from Clemson, but it's just the way it's a personal preference for me as far as the way running backs play. I prefer Etienne style more than Harris's. But like I said, I'm not going to argue Najee Harris to Miami here. It's a good fit. They need a power running back. They were trying to run between the tackles with Myles Gaskin last year. That's probably not a recipe for success.
It's been a while since we've talked with Randy Mueller here as the picks have been rolling through. But Randy,
I know in one of your recent blogs, you talked about a scenario that saw Deuce McAllister end up falling to you that you weren't necessarily prepared for, but you were prepared for it because you had seen it happen in a mock draft. Yeah, definitely happened when I was in New Orleans. The year we drafted Deuce McAllister, the Saints, before I had gotten there, had given up a ransom to get Ricky Williams. Mike Ditka, some of the other people that were there before felt he was pretty special, and I understand it. But we had gone through a year or so of Ricky and some of the issues that became prevalent later on in Ricky's career. And I love Ricky. I'd have this conversation with him one-on-one. But that mock draft that we did 3 or 4 days before the draft that allowed us to have the highest card on our board, Deuce McAllister, staring at us when we got there, allowed us to discuss it all ahead of time. One with our staff, one with owner Tom Benson. It gave me a chance to kind of go through this in my mind and get it all out there as to, I think Jim Haslett was our head coach. His comment at the time was, now what do we do? Well, and my answer was, let's pick the guy. We had done all the vetting. We had gone through it all. We had decided we kind of wanted to hitch our wagon to something a little more stable at that position. And Deuce was the option for us that made the most sense. But had we not had the mock draft exercises prior to the draft, I don't think that's when we could have pulled the trigger on draft day and got everybody on board. Having done it the week before or a few days before, it gave us a chance to build consensus and communicate that thought throughout our whole staff. And frankly, everybody was on board with it. Everybody thought it was the way to go. And I think I would credit these mock drafts for sending us down that road and allowing us to pick Deuce McAllister, who later went on to be the all-time leading rusher in franchise history. So I think it was a good pick. So our first running back off the board in our mock draft is number 18 to the Miami Dolphins. And our SuperFan selected Najee Harris, the running back from Alabama, for the Dolphins. What are your thoughts? I mean, there's a popular credo out there, never after running back in the first round. What do you think about that? I've heard you talk about sometimes it's more about the fit than necessarily a credo like that. Yeah, I definitely think it is about the fit, but I do think in running backs in general, the ones that you pick high in the first round or the ones that you pay on the street or as free agents, they'd better be 3-down backs. And so this guy better be able to play on third downs. He better be able to pick up blitzes on third downs, and he better be a little bit of a matchup problem for linebackers and safeties in nickel situations. And so if they feel like Najee can be a third down back as well as a first and second down back, it's probably worth taking. There are very few of these guys, in my opinion, in the league right now, and the game has changed a little bit since we picked Deuce McAllister back however many years ago that was. These backs now, whether it's the New Orleans guy or I'm trying to think McCaffrey in Carolina. These guys are 3-down explosive players that can change games on third downs and in the red zone. And so I don't know that Najee's one of those guys, but if they think they can utilize him on all 3 downs and be on the field all the time, it might warrant picking a guy with this kind of value in the first round. At pick number 19, the Washington football team will finally select the quarterback that has slipped from North Dakota, Trey Lance. Now, Brian, you and I will talk about this in just a moment, but I think Neil and I need to go and have a little bit of debate on the quarterbacks and what the proper way to draft a quarterback is at this particular point. So just hold on a moment. All right, Neil. Washington takes Trey Lance, quarterback, North Dakota. Great. That's not the conversation. We've teased it long enough. Drafting a quarterback in the first round. You have said that you got to take the lottery ticket. You got to buy the lottery ticket no matter what. If you don't have a franchise quarterback on your team, then you got to go buy the lottery ticket. To me, I don't want to buy the Powerball. I'll take my chances with scratch offs in the second, third, fourth, fifth round. I'd rather spend my lottery tickets there and get a guy in the first round that can actually compete right now. Because honestly, I mean, let's use Trey Lance, who you have here in the mock draft. There's so many question marks. Can he be a starting quarterback in the NFL? I already got two other quarterbacks on my team that I've got question marks about. So I'll live with the question mark quarterbacks I already have and build a better team so that when I do finally find the guy that can get the job done, there's already a team around him instead of, well, I got to keep trying to get this guy and now I still don't have any team around him.
Yeah, there are some flaws there in your thinking. First of all, there speaks the man who drafted the greatest quarterback of all time in the 6th round and thinks it happens every week. That is rarer than hen's teeth, Jay. The other thing I would say there is that the problem is if quarterbacks are if the top quarterbacks are going right high up in the draft, you've either got to trade away your entire empire of picks for years, or else be really, really terrible to get up there for that pick. So my thinking with Trey Lance was very much around, well, hey, he's fallen into our laps. We don't have to trade away any future picks, any picks from this year. It's basically just that first round pick, which is number 19 anyway, and all the top guys have really gone by 19. It was almost like Christmas come early for me there. That's why I picked it. I mean, I'm under no illusions. If Trey Lance is there at 19 in the real draft, then something's gone badly wrong, I think.
Well, no, I agree. If a quarterback like Trey Lance falls to you at this particular point, I don't necessarily begrudge you for taking the pick. But you also got to love this quarterback. You also have to feel confident that this guy can be the guy, especially if I have a team that quarterback, yes, might be the biggest need, but I got other holes I got to fill too.
Well, I'll take you back to the draft of a few years ago where a certain Patrick Mahomes came out and 11 teams, I think it was, passed on him. 11 teams in the league.
Patrick Mahomes was going to be terrible.
That's exactly. It's a third of the league passed on the guy we think is probably the best quarterback in the league right now. So who knows? You know, we were talking off air there about Mac Jones, and if Mac Jones, we think, oh, maybe the lowest ceiling and maybe won't be great. Who knows? He could be the next great thing at the end of the day. Justin Herbert last year, we thought, nah, Herbert's probably the third best quarterback in this group, and lucky for the Dolphins, they managed to get Tua in front of him. And what happened? The most impressive season was last year was by Herbert. So
I'd like to point out, I was on the Herbert train. I like Justin Herbert. I know you didn't. You hated him. You thought he was going to be the worst quarterback ever in the history of the NFL.
Well, maybe not quite that bad, but I didn't see him as a first round pick. No, absolutely for sure. But I'm not the sort of guy like you who'll come back and say, "Well, I had Mahomes all the time. He was always my number one."
Oh no, I'll sit here and admit I said I can recount exactly what I said about Patrick Mahomes. I said Patrick Mahomes makes throws that he's not going to be able to continue to do in the NFL. Dude throws off his back foot. He gets lucky more times than not. There's no way he's going to continue to do it. And then I said all through his NFL career, my God, it's got to come home to roost sooner or later. He can't be this lucky. There's no way he's getting away with this forever. And quite honestly, I think it did come home to roost there in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a walking boot last week, I thought, or so, or the week before. Yeah. But anyway, going back to it, I would kind of say, well, how come Lance has got to us at 19 when you're picking 4 or 5 picks ahead of us? I mean, what the hell were you doing? Who did you take?
Yeah, I took Micah Parsons because I've got a hole at the linebacker position, and I want the best linebacker available in the draft instead of the 5th best question mark at quarterback.
But you've also got a huge hole at quarterback. You're not going to win without a quarterback.
I may not win with this question mark quarterback either. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if I've got questions about these particular quarterbacks, and I do, other than Trevor Lawrence, I haven't heard anyone say that any of these other guys, maybe a little bit about Zach Wilson, is a stand-up franchise quarterback that's going to be with his team for years to come and make them a perennial Super Bowl contender. I haven't heard that about any of these guys. I've heard nothing but, well, he could do this, or his ceiling is Kirk Cousins, or, he's got this issue with him. So there's question marks about them all. And frankly, for me, let's use Trey Lance. My biggest problem with Trey Lance is the kid played at North Dakota, so he's not playing against, top level competition to begin with. And two, he didn't play at all last year. So I have no clue if this kid is going to be good or not.
He played one game, but it was more of an exhibition than anything else last year. But you're right. I mean, I think he's something like 11 starts in his career, which is not great for any player, especially quarterback position. What I would say, though, Jay, is that Lance is, what do you do? I mean, my life motto is better to ask for forgiveness than permission. So you kind of have that thing with Lance. Just keep taking quarterbacks, keep taking them, and eventually you'll hit on a star quarterback just through the law of averages. So I think taking Parsons, really good player, really like him, probably quite possibly the best defensive player in the draft this year. But if Lance is there, you have to take Lance. You just have to.
See, I would disagree. I will take my chances. If I'm going to take a question mark quarterback, then I'll take the question marks like Kellen Mond or Ian Book or Kyle Trask or any of those guys later. I like the kid. I always forget his name.
Davis Mills.
No, I know he's going up the boards, the kid from Stanford. I like the kid from, I think it's Texas or Oklahoma State. Buscelli, something like that. I could be wrong on his name. I've been wrong on it for a while. And I know I keep saying I like him and I can't even remember his name. That's how much I like him.
But it starts with B, so that must be good.
Right, exactly. He's a B level quarterback.
No, B for Brady. Take him in the 6th round.
Oh, sure.
Sometimes B.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's probably got as much chance of success as any other strategy.
But my point is all right. I've got I'm down on Cam Newton, and I'm not too thrilled with what I've seen so far from Stidham, and clearly the Patriots don't think Stidham is the answer either, or otherwise they wouldn't have re-signed Cam Newton. So if I'm going to stick with a questionable quarterback, I know the questionable quarterback I have who has NFL experience and has shown some success during his career. So I'll stick with him, take my chances later with a rookie quarterback who's got to develop and it's got question marks on his career going forward, and build a team around that question mark. So essentially, I will find, when I ultimately do find the answer, I have a team in place instead of, I'm going to waste, I don't want to call it a waste a pick, because again, I can't fault you for taking Trey Lance at this particular point. But if I take this quarterback and he doesn't pan out, well, that is a starter on my team that I don't have.
I also wonder, why the hell are we talking about the Patriots? We're not talking about losers here. We're talking about division winners. And don't you want to know what else I want to do in the draft?
Hold on. You know what? Let's let Randy Mueller weigh in on our conversation, and then I'll get back to you.
Okay, Randy, I need you to weigh in on this fight here. And I know Neil claims I've been extremely spoiled.
Yeah, no, I think there's probably truth in both scenarios. I do think, and I'm with you, if a team trades up and if you're willing to go all in, you'd better love somebody, not just like them. And I think that's the fear I have with this draft is I wonder if because some of these teams are so needy, if they push the value of some of these quarterbacks a little bit up the board and are taking a chance. I'll say this, teams nowadays are willing to swing and miss more than they were 10 years ago as well. They are willing to step up and take a giant swing and get the bat off their shoulder, probably more so than teams did, like I said, 10 or 12 years ago. Part of it is they're not hamstrung with an albatross contract that destroys your franchise for 10 years if you miss on a guy. We've seen teams this year get out from underneath contracts and cap numbers, and that's something that other teams in the past have not been able to do. So, time will tell. I do think everybody views these 5 quarterbacks, and you mentioned them all. I think there's a consensus maybe on those top 2, but everybody beyond that seems to be a little bit of a, I won't say there's not the consensus on the other 3, that's for sure, and that would make me nervous.
So Randy says we both have points. You could tell that he is a former NFL GM because he's a politician. He says we both have points. Ultimately, though, you got to like the quarterback, or you got to love the quarterback. You can't just like him. And I don't love any of these quarterbacks, so that's why I didn't take him. You did. Let's get to what you want to do for your team, because your team needs more than just a quarterback.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Yeah. First of all, before we do that, just to say, I do believe that there are some really positive and encouraging traits with Lance. One of them being his study and his what's going on between the ears. He appears to be really a guy who likes to study the game and learn offense, and so
that's good. He better learn how to throw the ball a little better, so he's a little bit more accurate.
He certainly has footwork problems for sure, but he has that great athleticism as well to get out of the pocket and make some to run the ball in this sort of modern style we have these days, Jay. So, yeah, sure, he's got things to work on, and of course, lack of experience on the field is his biggest issue, I think. However, setting that aside, yeah, absolutely. I think Washington are going to certainly look at the offensive line. I think, although they might not be desperate for a starter, they could probably get away another year with what they have at left tackle. They certainly need to bring in some depth and some youth, I think, to that line. And the other position two positions I would look at, probably safety and linebacker.
Neil, it's been a pleasure arguing with you.
But yeah,
it's time for me to argue with others.
And I'm just sorry, Jay, that every time you're on the losing end. But there we go. That's life.
Sure. Okay.
But you good luck. Take care, and you've got. So, am I the last of the NFC East jabronis you've been dealing with, or have you been through the entire NFC East by now?
I think so. Yeah, no one else from the NFC East. Yeah, the NFC East is done for this Super Mock Draft.
That's right. It's my division. Finally. Yeah. Right, and this time next year, Jay, you'll be picking in the top 10, so there'll be more quarterback questions for you.
Well, I don't know if there are any quarterback options for me next year, but we'll see.
There's always one or two who come out of the woodwork. Nobody was speaking about Zach Wilson this time last year. Nor even Mac Jones, to be fair. Nobody saw him as a potential top 10, top 5 pick. My God!
All right, Brian. I believe Neil is dead wrong. I think you're more on Neil's side than I am. I actually do think that there's going to be a quarterback. It may not be Trey Lance that is going to fall, just like we have seen here. I don't know if he's going to fall all the way to Washington. I don't know if the Patriots are going to trade back and still end up getting a quarterback. But I do think that one of these 5 quarterbacks is going to fall, like we have seen happen in our mock draft.
And that very well could be. And I think that the quarterback that's going to fall is going to be Mac Jones. Now, how far he falls, it remains to be seen. But in this scenario, Trey Lance falling to 19 to Washington, I honestly don't think you would make it that far. I think somebody like Chicago would probably jump the gun. And we talk about the Raiders moving back. Well, there's a trade partner right there, the Chicago Bears, to come up from 20 to 17 to get ahead of Washington, to get a Trey Lance. You get a comparison with these quarterbacks. And like I said, I've said earlier how much I love Justin Fields and why I have him as the second quarterback ahead of Zach Wilson in my rankings. But to me, in my rankings on tape grade and production, I have dead even Mac Jones and Trey Lance. Why I would take Trey Lance ahead of Mac Jones is this, because when you compare them side by side, they basically started the same amount of games. People say, well, Mac Jones has started all these games for Alabama. Well, Trey Lance started just as many games as Mac Jones did, just because the FCS has a real playoff and, Division I does not. So, or FBS doesn't. They have 4 teams. But to me, and again, this is a personal preference, man. I made this to a lesser extent comparison last year between Jake Fromm and Cole McDonald from Hawaii. And I made the comparison as this. If you're a gambler and you're playing the lottery, would you rather buy the Powerball ticket with a chance to win $20 million, or would you rather buy the scratch-off ticket with a chance to win $200? To me, Mac Jones is a scratch-off. Trey Lance is the Powerball ticket. Yes, the chances of winning your money are greater with Mac Jones, but I would just as soon take the gamble on Trey Lance for the chance to have much bigger. Because if you hit on Trey Lance, if he becomes I think he has the highest ceiling, even higher than Trevor Lawrence per se. I think Trey Lance's skill set has a higher ceiling than Trevor Lawrence, but his floor is far lower. But that's why I like Trey Lance here as the highest ceiling quarterback in this of these 5 for Washington here at 19 if it falls this way.
See, I like your analogy there, except what I would say is these first-round quarterbacks are like that Powerball ticket, but you got to buy like 3 or 4 quick picks to make it hit, whereas I can get Kellen Mond or one of those guys in the later rounds that I might like with that scratch off. And again, I got a better chance of hitting on that scratch off. Yeah, the payout's not as great, but it's still a payoff.
Can't go broke taking a profit, right? I mean, that's the old saying goes. But are you going to win a Super Bowl with Mac Jones as your quarterback? Are you going to win a Super Bowl with Kellen Mond as your quarterback? But if Trey Lance becomes what you think he can become, and you surround him, you put him in Washington, there's a lot of offensive talent on that team. And he's going to sit behind the great quarterback veteran here, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, baby. He's going to learn from Fitzmagic this year. He won't play this year. Doesn't have to. And that's great. He doesn't have to play. So, quarterbacks used to do this all the time. It was a great thing. You sat behind them for a year and you learned. It was a great thing. That doesn't happen anymore. But Trey Lance could do that in Washington, and 2022 season rolls around, he's ready to go, and you've got McLaurin, you've got Antonio Gibson, you've got these other weapons on offense, and it could be a good thing there for the football team.
Quarterbacks don't sit anymore because first round draft choices are so important. They have to play and they have to contribute to your team right away. Sitting a quarterback for a year obviously doesn't help you in that regard.
Well, it also it becomes, and I've been reading a lot about this, and it's because every year now we see these receiver classes are almost stacked every year now, and I think this is also a byproduct of all these kids are playing 7-on-7 now, all during the summer and off season from the time they're in middle school through the time they get out of high school. They're just developing all these passing repetitions all throughout the year. So I think quarterbacks are more advanced now, wide receivers are more advanced. As we go along, that's why you're starting to see development for offensive linemen is way behind everything else because there's no 7-on-7 for offensive linemen. So right. I feel like that's almost, you can almost pinpoint that as the way that. So yes, quarterbacks are playing quicker now than they used to, but it doesn't hurt to sit back. Like would it have hurt Joe Burrow not to play last year and you had Andy Dalton on a 1-year deal and let him get destroyed behind that crap offensive line last year and then have Joe Burrow ready to come in this year? Probably wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world if we're being honest. But, it didn't happen that way, so it is what it is. But no, I mean, if Trey Lance has to sit for this year, fine, great.
All right, at pick number 20, we have a trade. Chicago is going to receive pick number 31, pick 144 in the 4th round, and a 2020 second, and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to move up and take wide receiver Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. This is what Nick has to say. I believe a key to keeping the Chiefs in their window is keeping their passing attack heads and shoulders above any defense. Bateman fills a low-key hole for the Chiefs as an outside receiver that can win contested catches and get off press with the speed to still take it all the way. Bateman has the potential to be a more consistent Sammy Watkins in this spot. Tackle, obviously a bigger need, but this draft is deep with a big drop-off after Slater. This year you can get a similar quality tackle in mid to late second as late first.
I love Rashad Bateman as a player, but we all watched the Super Bowl, right? I mean, if you put Rashad Bateman on that team, is there any difference at all in the outcome of that game? No. So, I mean, and now you basically have holes at left and right tackle on this team, right? So you added Joe Tooney, but he's a guard. So if Kansas City's trading up from 31 to 20, it better be to come up to get Christian Darrisaw or Tevin Jenkins or someone along those lines, and not Rashad Bateman. This trade would be a no for me, Bob.
Well, let's find out what Nick has to say. Nick is not without an opinion, that is for sure. Okay, run it back for real this time, Nick. A trade, huh? You wanted to move up. Did you need to move up?
It appears that I did. So the Chiefs traded up from 31 to 20 with the Chicago Bears, sending away a 144th pick in this draft, which is in the back of the fourth round, and our 2022 second round pick, which is pretty aggressive, for a move. But actually, Veach has traded either a future first or second, in like 3 of the Chiefs' last 4 drafts. For moves. And so he's an impatient guy. And so I'm embodying that impatience. And I actually am sort of impatient for the Chiefs sitting there at the back of the first round, because obviously the Chiefs' number one need here is tackle. We all watched the Super Bowl, and we just saw them cut their 2 hurt starting tackles. They've addressed it a little bit, and there's some free agents still out there like Russell Okung that might be able to do some spot duty for them. They could bring in with the cash they have left. But they needed some sort of future piece of tackle. The problem is that after the first couple tackles went off the board here, I think there's a big drop off in talent, but then there's a big, deep group that then follows of about 7 to 8 guys that are all similar talent wise. It's sort of kind of to taste in terms of what you want to fit your scheme. And, as much as I like, several of the guys in that group, it just wasn't that inspiring of a pick to make at the back of the first round when it's a guy you might be able to get at the back of the second. Possibly you might have to trade up to grab a guy if there's a run, but I just think the Chiefs, if they're patient, they can get as good of a tackle prospect probably later. And so what I really wanted to do here was try to get something, more inspiring than that and fill a hole that I think is bigger than a lot of other commentators do, which is the hole for the Chiefs at wide receiver 2. You might think that the Chiefs in their high flying offense is all peachy there, but actually low key in 2020, the Chiefs did not have the same sort of offensive heights as they did the year before. And a big part of that is that the Chiefs are always better when they were clicking on all cylinders with Sammy Watkins in the game and participating. I mean, he was banged up a lot of last year, didn't quite come on in the playoffs the way that he did the year before. Which was key in that playoff run where we actually won it. And now he's gone. And so they really have nothing there. And they specifically need a outside wide receiver who can get off press. And that is Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. I realize that I should have probably given you the name a little earlier there in the rant. But, look, he had a lot of production. He, ran at his pro day right around 4.4. So he's actually faster than he even kind of looked on tape. But he has that speed to get away, and he's just a good contested catch guy. And that's sort of a problem with the Chiefs, that they are a finesse offense. If teams figure out a way to take Tyreek away and they're beating up Kelsey at the line a little bit, the Chiefs really need that third option in order for everything to keep humming the way they need it to. And so for me, he was kind of the last guy that I was going to be super happy with getting out of the first round. I didn't mind, using some capital to get him. And it turns out the Titans were about to take him a couple picks later. So it was not in vain.
All right. Well, I mean, the way that most people look at it, including Randy Mueller and Brian Bosarge, who we just spoke to, are looking at your offensive line going, all right, you traded up to take a wide receiver. Another wide receiver wasn't necessarily going to help you win that Super Bowl. I'm looking at our lads, which, you guys made some moves on the offensive line. And, I think 4 out of the 5 guys, 1 are all guys that people have heard of before. Joe Tooney at left guard, Austin Blythe at center, Kyle Long at right guard, Mike Remmers at right tackle. It's your left tackle there, Martinez Rankin, who's currently listed as your starter. That's sort of a problem.
Yeah, that definitely is. If we're going into the season with Martinez Rankin as our left tackle, that is a serious problem. I mean, the good news is that in terms of depth, they have the 3rd round pick from last year who opted out, and Lucas Niang, who could be in the mix at either tackle spots. He may end up winning that out over Remmers, or one of the two then moves over to the left. And like I said, if they don't get a great prospect in the first round, I do think there's some guys that, with some potential beyond the first round. And then I think if they don't get what they think is a slam dunk prospect, they're going to have to sign a guy in free agency. And almost I kind of want them to do that no matter what. That was part of my calculation, is just that, given that the Chiefs are in, a Super Bowl window, and they're going to try to grind out as many championships as they can if they can. How confident do you feel just penciling in any rookie as your left tackle in a championship window? I think no matter what, I think they want to sign one more guy, with Villanueva and Okung both out there. Both those guys have had a bit of injury issues, but if you think you're going to count on them for half a season and then maybe hope, get the rookie involved, that makes me feel a lot better. But if that's going to be your plan, then I kind of don't mind waiting beyond the first round for that.
You also have Prince Tega Wanhago, who's great in Madden, by the way. You have the good doctor coming. Will he come back, or is he? He is
coming back.
He'll
be in the mix at one of the guard spots. I think he'll be competing with Chris Long for the starting position there.
Kyle Long. Chris is the D end. I get all the Long kids mixed up too. So.
So do I.
All right. What other position? I mean, I got to assume you got some defensive concerns here too that you're going to be looking at later rounds.
Yeah, and that was the other thing that I would have thought about, depending upon how the first round fell, is potentially moving up for a D end. Problem is, this is just not a great edge class, and so to be leveraging additional assets for a trade up to get a guy who none of these edges are dudes you really want to break the bank for. I feel like, I think there's potential value there. That's something I'm hoping falls to the Chiefs, because I think they do need some help to take some pressure off of Frank Clark on the other side. But they kind of got that a little bit in the interior though as well, because you have Frank and Chris Jones next to each other, and they brought in Jaron Reed from the Seahawks on a 1-year deal, and he can really rush the passer up the middle too. So I think they can get away with uninspiring edge play from that other spot. That guy's always going to be one-on-one with the way they're set up now. So I think they'll be okay, but yeah, I really would like them to come away with an edge they really like in this draft, and possibly a corner as well. I do think they may try to bring Bashad Breeland back. He's still hanging out there in free agency as well, probably available on a cheapish short-term deal. I don't know why the rest of the league doesn't like him. He's played well for the Chiefs in the last few years, but I think they're kind of waiting to see how the draft falls for them before they give him a call. But the secondary depth has been an issue for the Chiefs for a while, and a corner would be nice.
All right, Nick. Well, I would wish you good luck, except I hate the Chiefs, so I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want Patriots luck right now. It's wasn't the best, luckiest season for you guys last year.
Well, it's not just Patriots luck that you'd be getting. You'd be getting Pod Vader luck. Monty suggested perhaps I should make the Chiefs my boyfriends.
Yeah, that would be a totally out there pick. I don't think anybody's, riding on the Chiefs this year.
Yeah, but then what happens to my boyfriends.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Bad things.
I don't think you could really, I'm not, in order for it to be the boyfriends, you have to be kind of sincere in that, right? In order for the bad juju to work. And I feel like you would have trouble with sincerity with the Chiefs as your boyfriends.
That's very true. It's very true. Plus they're just too ugly. I can't bring myself to that. I couldn't do it. All right, Nick. Well, good luck anyway.
And to you as well.
Before we move on, Randy, if now that I'm thinking about these fights that I've had with Neil, if you wouldn't mind weighing in on another fight that I've had with Neil.
We have lots of arguments.
That's okay.
That's
good.
And that was defensive philosophy. Does a secondary make a pass rush, or does a pass rush make a secondary? I previously thought that it was more of a second. If I had a great secondary, then I don't necessarily need the pass rush. Obviously, a great pass rush can make a secondary much better. And I've come around to that a little bit more. However, what I think, and maybe this is more from a fan's perspective, but maybe it's happening in the NFL too, quote unquote, edge player. I've heard you talk about that position doesn't exist. And maybe maybe because this argument has come up that people see that I need a pass rush, I need an edge player. Is
Right.
that the case, or how would you look at this?
Yeah, I think my philosophy on the edge rusher is totally different than most. And again, it comes from my time with Nick Saban in Miami. We did not have that position. When we run 11 out there to start the game, we don't run out an edge rusher. So we ended up looking for defensive linemen that could play the run and rush the passer. We thought the scheme would help us rush the passer. I err on the side of bigger guys on defense, especially up front, and then fast guys in the secondary. I think finding defensive linemen is the hardest thing to find, I'll be honest with you. So edge rushers to me are a little bit of a limbo position because they're not really linebackers and they're not really defensive linemen. So I think your philosophy can go both ways. You can say, yeah, we're going to improve our pass rush, but there's more to the game than pass rushing. So I think you can find ways to come up with that. I think also if you did a history and went back and looked at the mistakes teams made the most frequently in drafts the last 20 years, you'd find a lot of these edge rushers, and then I call them tweeners, guys that really just don't really have a position. You find that teams reach for that skill set and end up missing on the player. I just think it's a hard combination to find. And I would rather go with a bigger, more physical, more heavy-handed player than an edge rusher. And I'd find a way to make up for it in the back end by drafting a couple fast corners.
Here's an example of maybe where that mistake happened, because at 21, the Indianapolis Colts have selected Gregory Rousseau, the edge rusher from Miami, while Jalen Phillips still remains on the board. And Jalen Phillips is one of your favorite guys. So perhaps it would have been better for our superfan to go with Phillips rather than Rousseau.
Yeah, I think there's an example of that there. I think that let's don't pretend that just because we call these guys edge rushers, that they're good pass rushers either. It's kind of like a shooter in basketball, right? Everybody says this guy's a shooter. He's a shooter. Well, there's a lot of guys that shoot, but I want the guys that make them, so I want the rushers that actually get to the quarterback too. And I don't know that I see Rousseau being that edge rusher, even though he might be listed in that category. I want a guy that's a little more well-rounded, I guess. And I think I see that in Jalen Phillips. I think if you really study his tape, he can rush from inside, he can rush from the 5 technique, and he can rush from the edge all in one different set of downs. That's how versatile he is. And I just think that's hard to find. And we'll find a way to scheme it a little bit to where he can be effective closing the quarterback in as an edge rusher. So again, that's not to say I know any more than anybody else. I'm just using a little of my history where I've seen mistakes made in the past.
And Brian, what are your thoughts here on pick 21 for the Indianapolis Colts?
This was a pick that I needed to make for them. And honestly, I had a tough time trying to select the best possible player here for the Colts. I wasn't exactly sure. You can't go wrong with an edge rusher.
And it does fit a position of need for the Colts, no doubt. But this is another one of those where it almost has to be an offensive tackle here. If it's not, edge rusher would be solid and fine. And I love Gregory Rousseau. Don't get me wrong. I think his potential is through the roof. He did not test as good as he needed to at his pro day, or we wouldn't be talking about him at 21. We would have been talking about him a lot higher had he tested better at Miami's pro day. But Rousseau is a tremendous player here, but I think the Colts, again, you would have to almost look at a Christian Darrisaw, Tevin Jenkins, lesser extent of Samuel Cosme from Texas. Those are probably the players you're looking for here at offensive tackles for the Colts. Maybe someone like Elijah Vera Tucker if he was to fall down here a little bit as well. But yeah, Rousseau is a tremendous player, but I think that's definitely not a position of immediate need like tackle is.
This seems like a good spot to take a break. Brian, if people are interested in more of your draft takes, where can they find you?
Everything that I do is readily available at deepfrieddraft.com. Pretty much I'll have something new going up every day for the next probably 3 to 4 weeks at least. And you can always follow me on Twitter at deepfrieddraft for immediate hot takes occasionally.
And Randy Mueller, thanks so much for jumping in. We're going to be talking to you some more. But in the meantime, if people are itchy for more draft talk, where can they find you?
Well, as you've referenced a couple times, I write on my blog. It's at MuellerFootball.com. I just kind of take angles from the GM's chair. That's all I know. And so I write 2 or 3 columns in there a week for my blog, and it seems to gain a little traction. The other thing we're doing now is we do the podcast for The Athletic. It's called The Football GM. Mike Sando, The Athletic national writer, and myself known each other for years, and we do a little podcast once a week for them, and that seems to drive some listeners as well. So it's enough to keep me busy, and talking ball is really all I know. So it's been fun to hang out with you and to do those things as well.
And that will do it for part 2 of the SuperFan Super Mock Draft, picks 12 through 21. What do you think? How things going? Is your team doing what you were expecting? There was a big trade. Chicago traded back. Kansas City moved up. Kansas City took a wide receiver. Seems a little redundant, but Nick had his reasons. He told him. What do you think? At NFU Podcast on Twitter, Facebook.com/NFU Podcast, another great place to continue the conversation. Part 3 will be the exciting conclusion to the SuperFan Super Mock Draft and that all-important announcement that will change the course of Next Fan Up forever. And it really is a fairly large announcement. So, for all the super fans, for Randy Mueller, for Brian Beausarge, I'm Pod Vader. Part 3 is coming. There you have it.
Dear friends and colleagues, saying goodbye is never easy. I believe we can all feel proud of what we have done together. And through it all, you have maintained your professionalism and commitment and remained true to the spirit of the Charter. That principle.
We go out, we hit people in the mouth.